world literature who has read earlier world literature about devils. Right? And once you see this, you think, what's the matter? Are all those earlier devils illiterate? They can't read? This devil knows. Yeah, I know. Look, Mephistopheles says, I am that power that wills forever evil, but does forever good. You understand? The logic of that is, we had to have evil in the world because it's only overcoming evil that makes us to a high... Remember, I told you that the fortunate fall was... See, so whatever evil the devil does is by God's plan to bring higher good into the world. Well, the devil tries to do evil, but it doesn't work out. This devil says, look, Mephistopheles can speak for himself. But me, I genuinely desire good. I don't desire evil. Just my job, look. A long time ago, I was given the job of denying. They said, look, you have to go out and deny and create some chaos because without that, there would be no events in the world. I mean, without me, it would all be like an endless church service. Singing hymns, but very holy, but really, really boring. No, they say, there must be events. If there were no events, there'd be no newspapers. Think about that for you guys in Manila. If not for the devil, you would be out of the job. There have to be events. So against the grain, I produce events. They made me do it, and then they blame me for it? It's not fair. I am a slandered man. The joke here, of course, that Satan means the slanderer. But, listen, he's doing the victimology routine. Anybody can make himself into a victim, the devil himself. Set your mind to it. You can find a way. Well, he says, I'm like you. And here becomes the next aspect of this. Because evil is not grand but paltry. The way good is like onions, evil is also paltry. It's small, and that's why you get a paltry demon, because most evil comes about by bad wishes or something like that. That's what most of it comes. So that's why the devil is this way, because that's what most evil is like. Not the worst evil, but most evil takes place that way. And for that to be the case, the devil has to resemble us. Understand? If the devil resembled us, he'd be an ordinary guy. I mean, look, this devil dresses reasonably well. A little shabby in the cornfield, but he dresses reasonably well. He's fun to be with. He's, the second most popular person in his fraternity. Not the most popular, but, he doesn't attract attention. But everybody likes him. Listen, if people didn't like evil, didn't like the devil, why would there be so much of it? Of course they like it. The devil is a nice guy. Well, he's companionable. He's fun to hang out with. You could invite him to any dinner party and not be embarrassed. I mean, you wouldn't put him in the seat of honor, but, he can be anywhere. And he's like us, which means, you understand, that hell is like human history. Hell has to change as we do because it is us personified. Understand? So, yes, sure, in the old days, there was a hell beneath that, Dante described, and up there in the heavens with the angels. But, we read Copernicus too. We know the earth is at the center now. We know, Newton's laws. We just changed. So now, we've got got it the way you do. It used to be the four elements and earth the center. Now everything is in confusion, all because of your science. We've had to follow along with it, because we're just like you. It's really a problem. I wish you'd let it alone. Let me tell you how I got rheumatism, okay? What do you mean? The devil has rheumatism? Sure, he says, why not if I put on fleshly form? Look, I was going to a soiree, in the Capitol. I guess today he might say, I was going to testify before the Senate. Right? I was going to this soiree, this cocktail party, and, I'm paraphrasing. I dressed up in my tux, but I made a mistake. Instead of waiting to get the earth to dress up, I did it out there. Now out there in space, it's 250 degrees below zero. And I put on fleshly form. Do you know what that's like? And you realize that a ray of light takes 8 minutes to get from the sun to the earth. Right? At 300,000 kilometers per second, right? Well, it takes 8 minutes. Now, you go and go out there to 250 degrees below zero for 8 minutes in nothing but a tuxedo and see what happens to you. No, I got rheumatism. I didn't know what to do about it. I went to all the doctors. And what they're like. They said, I'm sorry, they said, you have a problem in your right nostril. I'm a left nostril specialist. You better go to Vienna, where there's a right. No, they didn't help me at all. I even started, going to, old ladies who perform spells because, I'm terribly superstitious. Tell me, if the devil is superstitious, what exactly does he believe in? Devils? It's a wonderful line that he's superstitious. He says, but what finally cured me? I was in Vienna and somebody gave me hops malt extract. The equivalent today would be this, Dr. Pepper. By the way, when I went to my first Dostoevsky conference, long before you were born, in Vienna, they made sure to serve hops malt extract for us because it cured the devil's rheumatism. And it's really the equivalent of Dr. Pepper, you see. And so I was dancing a jig, and I wanted to express my thanks. So I went to take out a thank you column in the newspaper, and, they said, I'm sorry, they said, we can't do it. To publish something from the devil would be reactionary. It means we believe in the supernatural. We're all material. We can't publish something from the devil. And I said, no. From God would be reactionary. But from the devil, that's okay. No, they say, we can't do it. They say, well, do it anonymously, if you like. But what's the good of a letter of thanks that's anonymous? I ask you. Now, you see what happens? All my best impulse, all my best wishes are denied me simply because of my social position, that is devil. The devil, you see, is a materialist. Of course, the joke of a supernatural being being a materialist goes on. But if he's like us, and he follows all our current intellectual fashions, well, he's a materialist. He says, criminology is just not what it used to be. In the old days, we had hell and fire and brimstone, the lake of fire, and now, no, we have to keep up with your progressive views, so we have nothing but the stings of conscience and all that rot. And I ask you, who's better for it? Why, people who have no conscience. How can they be punished for stings of conscience? They don't have a conscience. No. Well, he's a materialist, you see? And then Ivan says, wait a minute. How can you be a materialist? And the devil says, well, I'm I'm also an agnostic. Wait a minute. How can you be an agnostic? You've seen God, haven't you? And the devil says, have you read Descartes? You see, Descartes says, you can know that you exist, I think therefore I am, but everything else is subject to doubt. Well, maybe it only seems like it's God. You can never be sure. I'm an agnostic, you see. And, well, let me tell you, Ivan says, what punishments do you have there now, apart from the stings of conscience? And he says, well, let me tell you a story. It comes from our Middle Ages. Not your Middle Ages, our Middle Ages. They have history too, you see. And this is a story about, a good, progressive Russian atheist who, rejects faith, God, the supernatural, and he dies, and he finds himself in the other world. And he's lying there, and Ivan says, almost the way his father says with hooks, what did he lie on? Oh, I suppose there was something to lie on, said the devil. Anyway, he says, I'm not getting up. This is against my principles. No, even if there's absolutely ironclad evidence contradicting him, he will not change his principles. Because that would be to be reactionary. Can't do that. But, well, he lay there. His punishment, turns out, you see, was he had to walk a quadrillion kilometers in the dark. And then in parentheses it says, we've adopted the metric system, By the way, there are translations of this book that leave that parentheses out, as if, somehow the translator said, this is clearly, he's making fun. Well, it keeps up with the times, so hell has the metric system. They're not going to have miles or Russian versts or something like that. No, it's got to be kilometers. They're with it. So he has to walk a quadrillion kilometers in the dark. And only then would the gates of heaven be opened. Well, he lay on the road for, 1,000 years, and finally he got up to walk. And Ivan says, well, what difference does it make? It would probably take him several billion years to reach it. You see what he's doing? Look, he's saying, oh, more than that. Here, you see, now imagine he could walk, 5 kilometers an hour for 24 hours for 365 days. How many billions of years would it take before he could reach, 1,000, a million, a billion, a trillion, a quadrillion kilometers? It would 6,497,143,250 and a half. That's how long it would take. And 12 hours and 6 seconds. And yeah, but you keep thinking of our Earth. The universe may have existed multiple times. Now he would say, from the Big Bang to the Big Crunch, and again, and again, and again. So, listen, we may have been sitting here talking about having the same conversation in a previous universe, and we may have known. Who knows? Anyway, he gets to the gates of heaven, and when he sees it, he says, it is so beautiful, so inspiring, that it was worth walking not just a quadrillion kilometers, but a quadrillion raised to the quadrillionth power. Well, all the angels just felt they couldn't talk to him. He'd become such a conservative so quickly. It's just not proper. Well, that's what our punishments are like over there. Look, I really want to do good, he says. when Jesus was crucified, when he rose from the dead, and all the angels got around and shouted, Hosanna, Hosanna in the highest. And I wanted to shout Hosanna too. You know how aesthetically impressionable I am. But then common sense, a horrible thing to happen, occurred to me. The moment you say Hosanna, all events in the universe will be over. Everything will stop. There'll be no newspapers, for who would buy them? What am I going to write? So no, although everybody hates me for it, I stick to my nasty ass. I can go on with this. The devil's tone, you know what I'm saying? If you believe in nothing, irony is your attitude to life. Like late night talk shows, right? The core idea is that the petty demon, evil is itself paltry, right? That's why the other world reflects our world, why the devil is a materialist. You have the idea of the devil always being able to defend himself, always giving a plausible explanation for what he does, because he's really not a victim, he's the real victim. Anyone can do that. And the other thing which I haven't mentioned is, remember the devil keeps saying, I yearn for reality up there. It's not quite real. I'm X in an indeterminate equation. You know, I mean, it's another mathematical metaphor. You know, if you have, let's say, 5 unknowns, but only 2 equations, you can't solve it, right? There has to be the same number of equations as unknowns. Well, otherwise, it's X in an indeterminate equation. That's what I am. Sometimes I don't really, what I really want to be, God help me, I would like to be a fat, old lady, 14 stone. What is a stone? It's 28 pounds, I think. Simple-hearted and stupid, and lighting candles to God. Now that would be being embodied. That would be real. That the devil, remember I told you that time exists as not just realities, but a set of possibilities. What's real is not just what happens, but what could have happened. The devil describes himself as in that shadow world of the could have happened. Okay? So it's also this section is also about that kind of time. All right, let me go back to the passage right before it. Remember that Ivan, on his way to his 3rd interview with Smerdyakov. It's cold, it's Russia, and he knocks into a drunken peasant. And the peasant falls down and groans and lies there. And Ivan thinks he'll freeze to death by morning, but he doesn't want to. Ivan is the one who does not get involved. Remember, he's the eyewitness. He's the observer. He's the one who never commits himself. He's always joking, writing paradoxes. And then he goes back, and by the time he finishes with Smerdyakov, he realizes that he is guilty, that he can't escape from responsibility by holding aloof, just by having wishes. And so he goes back and he finds that peasant and gets help for him and pays for it so the peasant will live. Now, that too alludes to a biblical story, another one which is at the heart of this book. It's a scene where Jesus has said, you must love God and your neighbor in a wise nice guy says, well, come on, who's my neighbor? And he tells the story. A certain man went down from Jerusalem to Jericho and fell among thieves, which stripped him of his raiment and wounded him and departed, leaving him half dead. And by chance there came down a certain priest that way, and when he saw him, he passed by on the other side. I'm not getting involved. And likewise, a Levite, when he was at the place, came and looked on him and passed by on the other side. But a certain Samaritan, that is, someone who is not from the same community, a foreigner, okay? I don't know. All these, it's in Chicago, and this is, but a guy from Kansas, a Samaritan, as he journeyed, came where he was, and when he saw him, he had compassion on him, and went to him, and bound up his wounds, pouring in oil and wine, and let him on his own breast, and brought him to an inn, and took care of him. And on the morrow, when he departed, he took out tuppence, and gave them to the host, and said unto him, take care of him, and whatsoever thou spendest more, when I come again, I will repay thee. Which now of these three, says Jesus, thinkest thou was neighbor unto him that fell among thieves? This story reenacts Ivan with the peasant, the Good Samaritan story, right? You cannot avoid responsibility by holding aloof, by saying it's not your business, by irony. You are always responsible. That's what gets reenacted at the trial. Remember when everybody is being a voyeur? I imagine even the ladies who were so basically longing for the acquittal of the interesting prisoner were at the same time, without exception, convinced of his guilt. What's more, I believe they would have been mortified if his guilt had not been so firmly established, as that would have lessened the effect of the closing scene of the criminal's acquittal. He is guilty, but he will be acquitted from motives of humanity in accordance with the new ideas, the new sentiments that have come into fashion, and so on. And you remember, Rakitin gives us a silly thing, well, he had to because of his environment. Right? And then, here it is, Katerina Ivanovna, at last, betrays him. She hates him so much now. Remember, it's always been a love that has been a hate. And now it switches, right? And she betrays him and destroys him, right? That's the problem with love out of laceration. It is so close to hate that it will reverse itself almost immediately. Right? Well, Dmitri is convicted. Is he responsible? Morally, though. I think the answer is yes. It was only a matter of chance that he didn't kill himself. Play the scene over again, and it would come out different. Beforehand, he had said, I don't know. I'll try not to, but once I see his ugly face, I don't know what I'll do, he said, and then do it again, and he would. Perhaps he's not as guilty as Smerdyakov, but he certainly is morally responsible. Without him, it could not possibly happen. Ivan clearly is morally responsible. Though not convicted. Pretty much you see that anybody who wished Fyodor Pavlovich dead, who enjoyed the fact that he is dead, like everybody at the trial, they're also guilty because of their wishes. They're not as guilty. It's not that everybody's equally guilty, but everybody is guilty for their wishes. This is what Father Zosima means when he says, Everyone is responsible for everyone and for everything. You have a role in the evil in the world because of your wishes. And you, therefore, need to go around and help others in small ways and give onions around. Alyosha wants to help the boys. I wish we had more time to go over all this stuff with the boys, you know. It's repeating the main story, Kolya is sort of a little island. And by the way, I should mention that we know that when Dostoevsky was first planning this novel, the earliest note in his notebooks about this novel is, he writes, find out whether a boy could lie down between the tracks and have a train pass over him and live. Which is what happens, right, with Claudia, right? Now, listen, he's a novelist, just says he lives, right? It's fiction, but no, he's a realist, you see. This is the impulse of realism, it has to be. That it starts with the boys, and it ends with the boys. Because what Alyosha is trying to do is to create in them the good memories. Turn this tragedy of Alyosha into something positive by creating the good memories, because in a time of stress, when you could go either way, a good memory can make you say to yourself, I am not that kind of person. I am this kind of person. I don't do this. On page 878, he says to the boys, let us make a compact here at Alyosha's stone, that we will never forget Alyosha and one another. They're all going to be bound to each other, one another. And whatever happens to us later in life, if we don't meet for 20 years, let us always remember, again, Fyodor Pavlovich forgets, goodness is associated with remembering. Let us always remember how we buried the poor boy and whom we once threw stones. Do you remember by the bridge? And afterwards we all grew so fond of him. And even if we were occupied with most important things, if we attain to honor or fall into great misfortune, still let us remember how good it was once here, when we were all together, united by a good and kind feeling. You remember it and will agree with my words sometime. You must know that there is nothing higher and stronger and more wholesome and good in life in the future than some good memory, especially a memory of childhood. This is one of the reasons why, if you haven't had a good childhood, in some sense there's no making up for it. This is why parenting is so important. Perhaps we may even grow wicked later on, may be unable to refrain from a bad action, but still, well, what's more perhaps, our memory may keep us from some great evil. Yes, I was good and honest now. That'll be so, I understand you, Karamazov, cried Kolya. I give you my words that I'll never forget one of you. I have a place in my heart for you all. I beg you to keep a place in your heart for me. Well, and who has united us in this kind feeling? Who, if not Alyosha? We will remember, it's on 880. We love you, they all caught it up. There were tears in the eyes of many of them. Hurrah for Karamazov, Kolya shouted ecstatically. He's gotten over his irony. He is the irony that I have. And may the dear boy's memory live forever, Alyosha added again with feeling. Forever, the boys chimed in again. Karamazov, cried Kolya, can it be true what's taught us in religion that we shall rise again from the dead and shall live and see each other again? Alyosha too? We shall all rise again, and certainly we shall see each other again, shall Alyosha. Alyosha answered, half laughingly, half enthusiastic. How splendid that would be. He's not convinced, but how splendid. Well, now we will finish talking and go to his funeral dinner. Don't be put out or eating pancakes. It's a very old custom, and there's something nice in that. But let us go, and now we go hand in hand, and always all our lives, hand in hand. Hurrah for Karamazov, Goethe cried out once more rapturously, and once more the boys took up his exclamation, hurrah for Karamazov. It ends with, for all the horror that happens, the possibility of goodness. So what Alyosha has done is something very small. You can always do it. You can create a good memory. You can take the opportunity, as he does, to create a good memory in someone. It will matter. There's an old saying, biblical saying, cast a little bread upon the waters. Meaning, you never know where your good actor is going to lead to. It will ramify. It will help somebody, it will help somebody else. You never know. But if you are attentive to it, if you attend to the opportunities that are with you at every moment you're paying attention, directing your thoughts, you can really make the world around you different, one